Hey guys, so this video is going to be going over muscles that move the scapula, and that is going to be the muscles 26 through 39. So the first muscle we're going to look at here is actually going to be our trapezius muscle. And we kind of briefly mentioned this one earlier, but if I just go ahead and highlight it, you'll notice it's actually quite a large muscle in the upper back. And this one is, you can kind of see it. It's subdivided up into three portions. So we're going to refer to them as your middle fibers, superior fibers, and inferior fibers, but sometimes you may heard them just called the middle traps, superior traps, inferior traps, or sometimes just the different heads of the traps, but we're just going to call them the different fibers for now. And so if I go ahead and highlight these different locations, you'll notice here we've kind of got these lines here that help us identify the different fiber types. So up here, we've got fibers that kind of run in this direction, and those obviously being the top fibers are going to be called our superior fibers. And then we've got these kind of horizontal fibers here that are in the middle, so we call them the middle fibers. And then finally, last but not least, down here at the bottom, we've got our bottommost fibers, and so we're going to call those the inferior fibers. So we've got the one will be our superior fibers, 2 will be our middle fibers, and then 3 will be our inferior fibers. And so if we actually reflect back the trapezius, because it's pretty superficial, what we'll notice is there's a nice muscle, and this is kind of showing that. So here is the trapezius right here. Poorly highlighting it, I'm sorry, but there's the trapezius right there, and if we get kind of reflected it back, we would see up underneath it there's a few muscles here that are sort of important for us to know about. So one of them is actually going to be sort of right here. You'll notice that there's this muscle that connects to that angle there of the scapula, and you can kind of see it. This model doesn't show it super well, so again, I apologize. If we were in lab and you were looking at it, you could probably identify it a little bit easier than this image itself. But that right there is called the levator scapula. So levator, elevator, it's kind of, elevates the scapula, and then obviously, again, scapula is in the name, so it tells you kind of what it does. But for this one, the way I always identify it is I always kind of look for the muscle that's sort of resting right here on that angle there. And so kind of a little bit further beneath it, we've got these two actually muscles right here. I'm going to be skipping a little bit ahead on the muscle chart, but that's just because they're right here, so I want to cover it since we're already looking at it. And you'll notice, kind of like with the trapezius, there's a nice little line here that kind of distinguishes the two muscles together. So these muscles collectively are our rhomboids, and the rhomboids have a major and a minor, and so if we remember, the major is named because it's got bigger muscle, or the muscle itself is bigger. So out of these two, this one's clearly the bigger one, so we call that the major. And then above it, we have our minor, because our minor is the smaller of the two. And so those are going to sit up underneath that trapezius muscle there. And so now moving on to the next muscle here, the next one we kind of want to concern ourselves with is actually the pectoralis minor. So the pectoralis major is on our list, so I'm just going to go ahead and cover that now. We can see it right here, and I feel like we're all pretty familiar with the pectoralis major. That's the chest muscle. So this is our pectoralis major right here. Here's some of those fibers highlighted. And actually, again, kind of while we're here, I'll go ahead and now highlight that is a part of the delt right there. The delt's a little bit bigger than that, so we'll get to the rest of it later, but that's just part of that delt. But so we've got our pectoralis major there, and if we kind of like the trap, if we were to like reflect it back, we would have a deeper view, and we would notice that because obviously we're looking at, we've got our ribs right here, so that kind of tells us we're looking at a nice little deeper view. But if I go ahead and erase this, sort of by the ribs there, we've got this muscle right here. And this muscle right here is actually going to be our pectoralis minor. So just like with the rhomboids, we had the major and the minor, with the major being the bigger of the two, we've got the pectoralis major and the pectoralis minor. Pec major is going to be the bigger of the two, and that's pretty obvious to see here, but it's also going to be the most superficial of the two. So pec minor is going to sit up underneath pec major, and I'll go highlight some of those fibers there. And so if I come over here, right here, we can see sort of a little bit of pec major right there, and then we can see really well the pec minor right there. And again, it's up underneath that pec major there. And so those are our pectoralis muscles. Another muscle we want to concern ourselves with is actually the serratus anterior. So this one I'm going to come here and show you because this one we kind of mentioned it earlier. So we were talking a while ago about those muscles in between the ribs. So we call these muscles the intercostals, inter meaning between, costal meaning rib. So the between rib muscles, intercostal muscles. But I said don't look at these muscle. Actually, let's go ahead and keep that highlighted. I said don't look at this muscle here that's resting on the rib. I had said that these muscles on the ribs are actually a different set of muscles. And those muscles on the ribs, funny enough, are called the serratus anterior. And kind of why they're named that is because if we look here, you'll notice they have a serrated edge appearance. So sometimes people will actually call these your fish scales because on a person they can almost look kind of like fish scales. But if I highlight them here, you'll notice that they form this sort of like serrated tooth-like appearance. And so I'll go ahead and highlight some of these fibers here for us to see. So this right here is going to be our serratus anterior muscle. And so I actually went ahead and got a better picture because you can see them pretty well in person, but on this image you can't see them. So I wanted to show you just kind of how big they actually are. Because they do wrap around the body. So the serratus anterior is actually going to kind of start from the back of the body by the scapula, and they're going to wrap around and they're going to connect here onto the ribs here. So the serratus anterior is actually quite a big muscle, even though on some of these models they look kind of small because you can only see a small portion of them. But obviously here we can see that they're pretty big. They're going to sort of go from the scapula and the back all the way almost towards the sternum there. Not all the way there, but close. And so, yeah, they're a little bit bigger than what we normally can see. And I also forgot while we're here, I forgot that I have an image right here of the levator scapula because I recognize that that one was a little bit hard to see earlier. So we've got the sort of vertebral border there of the scapula bone, and then sort of connected to that angle there, if we kind of go like this, connected to that angle there is going to be that levator scapula. And so that muscle highlighted in red is that muscle. So another big muscle we really want to focus on is going to be the deltoid muscle. And then so this is actually moving now more into the muscles of the upper arm. So if we come down here, yes, right here, we'll see this, and this is looking at a posterior view of the arm. So we're looking at the arm from the back, and you can kind of see that because there's the hands right there. But if I zoom in here, we'll see this big giant muscle right here. And I feel like a lot of us are probably pretty familiar with the deltoid. It's a common site to have injections done. And so this is the deltoid right here. It's quite a big muscle, and it actually is going to wrap around to the front. So this is looking at a posterior view. If we come here and look at an anterior view, you'll see that that's the deltoid there too. So it's a pretty big muscle, and if we kind of pair it back in with the pectoralis major like we did here, you can see that there's also part of it right here is also part of it in blue. That is going to be part of that deltoid as well. But yeah, so it's going to be quite a big muscle that's going to kind of span from the back of the arm to the front of the arm. And so another muscle, a pretty big muscle of the back here, is actually going to be the latissimus dorsi. So this is a good view of it. So if I go ahead and erase all the trapezius muscles there, we can see that there's this muscle right here that sort of has like a fan shape to it. And that's our latissimus dorsi right here. And if I go ahead and highlight some of those fibers. So this is your latissimus dorsi. Sometimes people just call these your lats. So you'll oftentimes hear it referred to as your lats. And the muscle itself is actually going to kind of run a little bit further up, and it's going to attach there onto the humerus. So it's a little bit more than what we just see on this image, but we do see the bulk of it on this image here. And again, that's called your latissimus dorsi. A lot of people will just call it your lats for sure.